Hello everyone, Mr. Tilbury here, and I think it's about time that we talk about One Piece. One Piece's insane popularity and quality need not be stated, and I wanted to rank the greatest adventures the Straw Hats have ever been on. The rankings consider several factors, from the impact on story, aptitude and execution, overall quality, and that beautiful X factor known as my enjoyment. There are so many great stories to choose from, with very few duds, so let's not waste any more time. These are my picks for the best story arcs in One Piece. We begin our countdown of great stories with Jaya, a short arc that mostly serves to transition us from post-Alabasta filler shenanigans into Skypiea. Thankfully, our time here is put to very effective use, setting up a ton of foreshadowing for our upcoming adventure in Sky Islands, but in tandem with this agenda, puts other key plot elements into place, such as foreshadowing for Dressrosa, it shows Luffy and Zoro demonstrating their growth as characters, and serves up some Sanji foreshadowing in a super subtle way. But biggest of all, this is where we unknowingly meet Blackbeard, giving us our first glimpses at the interesting parallels between Luffy and this big fat asshole. And when Blackbeard fails to capture Luffy here, it leads to this, which leads to this. See, before Oda knew that One Piece would be a smash hit, Alabasta was planned to serve as the series finale, so when you think about it, Jaya's role in the story is really one of plot expansion. At only a measly 19 chapters and 9 episodes, Jaya ends up playing a pivotal role in the formative years of the Straw Hats, and lets us all know where the story is going long before we can even understand it. Oh, and it gives us one of the most satisfying one-hit KOs in the series. And speaking of short arcs with big impacts, Amazon Lily is another important transition chapter. Like Jaya, this arc largely serves to segue one major arc to another, but the one thing that this foray into Girlland does incredibly well, in my opinion, is provide desperately needed comic relief after the enormous shock and strain of the defeat of the Straw Hats. I think this arc is hilarious, but what makes it great is how it doesn't miss the opportunity to add lore to the bigger picture, telling a story with a good emotional core amongst the humor. Specifically, Boa Hancock's portrayal is really interesting, with the writing swerving back and forth between eliciting anger and disgust, curiosity, and finally some real sympathy, picking up right where Sabaody Archipelago left off with teaching us about the ever-important celestial dragons. Furthermore, Amazon Lily formally introduces us to Haki, shows us Luffy receiving his quest to save Ace, and the arc further demonstrates Luffy's uncanny ability to entertain and inspire faith in others, which is something that plays a massive role in the arc that follows Impel Down. And while Amazon Lily isn't about to win any feminist awards, it's still an important, memorable, and entertaining middle chapter, all with just Luffy at the center. Bonus trivia, did you know that Boa Hancock's Japanese actress is Sailor Moon? Neat. After the macho, male-centric Dressrosa, shifting gears to Whole Cake Island feels like a breath of fresh air, featuring our missing Straw Hat heroes in a more politically themed drama with conspiracies and ulterior motives. The arc does a really commendable job giving us deviations from the One Piece norm without sacrificing its usual themes. In particular, Sanji's inner crisis takes center stage. In my opinion, Sanji was always a very cool character, but he always felt a little bit undeveloped. Thankfully, this arc does well to let us inside his head and understand his motivations. Because, let's be honest, this is a lot better than this.
ナミさんが来なきゃ俺がこの船に乗る意味は 98.72% ねえじゃねえか!
The way Sanji's story is written is brilliant in a subtle way, spending most of its time giving context and subtext to Sanji's motivations so that when he makes decisions like this, we can understand what's in his heart without it being directly stated, which is a really high form of artistry for what the show usually gives us. Also, this shot right here is like the most artsy thing ever. The arc balances the narrow line between real tension and melodrama, keeping its emotional core intact with a lot of heavy exposition, all while delivering some much-needed epic moments for a missing crew. If this was a countdown for best characters and individual character arcs, Nico Robin's biggest dramatic moment would likely be a solid contender for number 1. However, I am ranking arcs, and while Enies Lobby is mostly an exercise of sheer unadulterated greatness, it does have its share of blemishes. Enies Lobby hits the ground running with a climactic clash with the Marines, and delivers one hell of an emotional climax halfway through the arc with one of the best flashbacks the show has ever seen. Unfortunately, the second half of the arc can't quite stand up to the brilliance of its opening act, as the CP9 duels, while generally good and exciting at times, definitely drag on and the pacing just goes to hell. But what's important is how much content is packed into this arc, featuring some great character humor, plus the brilliance that is Soga King, but it also has more dire things like Monster Chopper and this piece of shit, plus it introduces series staples like Luffy's second and third gear, plus the beloved fight between Luffy and Rob Lucy. These are the things that help propel this arc into legendary status, but the icing on the cake for me personally is how it begins the healing process for Frankie and the Straw Hats. And Frankie, well, he's just the best. So even though Enies Lobby does have its missteps, I think if you can watch this scene without feeling something, I mean, just fuck you. But let's go back to basics, back when the show was far simpler, to Arlong Park. By modern standards, this story is comparatively quaint, and by now we've had successor arcs bastardize and leech its themes rather shamefully, but we cannot overlook the incredible upturn of drama this arc gave us back in the formative years of the Straw Hats. Notably, this story features a lot of important firsts. Nami is the first to leave the crew, the first to deny help from Luffy, it shows us the first fishmen, the first slow walk, and hell, the first true act of undeniable heroism by the whole crew. Arlong Park set an important standard for what to expect of the show. Specifically, Bellomir's concept of family. Nami's adoptive mother demonstrates that being part of a loving family has nothing to do with sharing blood, thus sets a critical standard that foreshadows the emotional glue that keeps the Straw Hat crew together. The Straw Hats are all brothers and sisters under Luffy's banner, no matter who or what they are or were. Thus, as far as I'm concerned, Luffy placing his beloved hat on Nami is still one of my favorite moments in the entire story, even 18 years later. Our journey to Alabasta pretty much begins the moment we meet Miss Wednesday, even if we don't realize it. Whiskey Peak, Little Garden, and Drum Island all help bond us to the character of Vivi and take their time setting up the long reaches of Crocodile's dreaded organization, so that by the time we do get to the Sand Kingdom, we are already armed with a massive amount of context. Then things go downhill from there. What makes Alabasta special is the same thing that made Arlong Park special, just with a bigger scale. The adventurous and silly tone of One Piece is chiseled back to reveal a gooey dramatic core, largely thanks to Crocodile setting a brilliantly sobering tone for our otherwise fun adventure to become King of the Pirates. We see just how tiny these characters are in this world, and just how outclassed Luffy is, and how high the stakes can go. However, this all sets up another important precedent, just how hard Luffy will push himself to save a friend. All in all, this arc may be overshadowed by the greatness it leaves behind, but as long as the fanbase refuses to let go of Vivi, the more indisputable is Alabasta's claim to true greatness. Dressrosa's overall quality is justifiably worthy of debate, thanks to its ludicrous length, cutting the crew in half, and some questionable morals, but the arc isn't the kind of arc where you want to miss the forest for the trees, because I think it tells One Piece's most ambitious story. Dressrosa is a masterclass in planting and payoff, constantly seeding things that come back in huge ways. While this is standard for One Piece, as a whole, this arc by itself cranks it up to 11. Rebecca's entire personality sets up the Riku family. The fairies go through multiple arcs. This old man is an admiral. The Straw Hat Grand Fleet is formed from these wacky gladiators. The arc is constantly throwing curveballs and wrenches at you. You hate Corazon because he's a fucking dickhead. The next thing you know, you're crying your eyes out as he dies. You're rolling your eyes at seeing your jackass, and then you see why Frankie respected him. And holy shit, the truth about the toys. It's so hard to predict where things are going that every time you think you know what's going on, suddenly a new development will spin around your perception. And at the center of all of its interconnected pieces is the incredible Doflamingo, who is, in my opinion, one of the best characters/villains the series has seen so far. Unfortunately for all of us, while I would love to ramble on about all the things in this arc worth commenting on, there's just far too much content for me to cover here in my attempt at a short summary. To me, the only real negative thing about Dressrosa really isn't so much the arc's length, but its progressively worsening undercurrent of sexism. Pretty much every female character is eventually shoved into the background for their male counterparts as the story plays out, and even Robin only plays like second fiddle to Usopp and Papa Kairos. It's easy to see why this arc generated the controversy that it did. However, while occasionally annoying, none of these things are damning to the narrative. In my opinion, Kairos and Rebecca represent a beautiful father-daughter relationship that the story otherwise lacked. Kairos is ultimately a very good father to his daughter, and that should not be overlooked. Hell, it was my favorite part. So while Dressrosa is definitely a long investment, I commend the breathtaking scale of the story, and it's certainly more than the sum of its parts. It takes serious talent to tell a story as ambitious as Dressrosa. But not all arcs are great because of length and scale. Some sorta sneak up on ya. Let's go back to a simpler time. Yeah, we just got our 9th crewmate. We sang a fun song. We laughed, we cried, and then we bump into an adorable mermaid. We get a good laugh with Duval. Ooh, is that Bulma's voice actress? We get a nice influx of new characters with Luffy's top competitors. Things seem pretty chill with Rayleigh, and we get a much appreciated Roger flashback. And that's it. Everything else turns out okay after that. Everything gets fucked. Celestial dragons, Kami is kidnapped, human trafficking, underbelly thrust into the light, and, oh god, Luffy, no, oh dear, oh dear, oh crap, stop, oh god, make it stop. And we've gone from good clean One Piece fun to absolute fucking disaster. Jesus. This arc moves incredibly fast, ending with the crushing defeat of the Straw Hats that helps shape and define the rest of the show. But what makes this arc so great and worthy of recognition is just how much tension they keep piling on in such a small time frame and constantly raising the stakes, punctuated by great action and absolutely terrific animation. And all of this is accomplished organically without dipping into filler whatsoever. This arc starts off so fun and so light and ends with some of the best material Oda has ever given us. And for anyone who doesn't understand why One Piece is so great, this arc by itself is an outstanding and compelling counter-argument. Marineford is usually the go-to pick for many fans of the show, for good reason. Oda basically took all the badasses of the universe that he had been writing and threw them all into a big party bowl, resulting in a completely relentless arc that throws you one jaw-dropping moment after another, pummeling you into the ground with a deluge of powerful characters in the biggest battle the series has seen thus far. The entire experience is filled with so many insane moments, it leaves you just exhausted, but craving more. Because at the peak of the mountain, past all the crazy action, the lore, and all things Garp, is the death of Ace, one of the biggest shockers the story has seen thus far, so long as Toei didn't fucking ruin it, god damn it! This is the fulcrum upon which modern One Piece spins its axis, giving one of its finest characters a climactic send-off and becoming something truly unforgettable. When Ace stops to protect his brother from Admiral Asshole, everything changed. But I gotta be honest, there is just one more arc that I like more. Water 7 was the arc that took me completely by surprise. It stole my heart and never gave it back. Before we got here, my impression of the first 200 or so episodes was that it was an above-average shonen anime with good characters and some decent potential, but it wasn't anything mind-blowing. I was watching it, I was liking it, but I didn't feel deeply invested. Thankfully, Water 7 changed all of that, and as a result, this was when I finally fell in love with One Piece. The reason this story grabbed me so effectively is because of how much psychological depth was added to the characters. The normal cliches of shonen anime peeled away, moving away from a big bad antagonist, instead focusing on inner conflict and personal dilemma, mystery, lies, enigmatic actions, and fascinating mental breakdowns. Each of the Straw Hats are handed incredible moments of character building, be it Zoro teaching Luffy how to be a captain, Sanji teaching Chopper the consequences of fighting, or Chopper running to Usopp's side regardless of the situation. All of the characters really shine here. Usopp and Luffy's heartbreaking duel, Robin's betrayal, and the introduction of the very easy to hate at the time Frankie, this arc swerves harshly into the shockingly dark, delivering a tense, cerebral foray into the inner hearts and minds of the crew. This arc demonstrates that these characters have hearts that can be broken, agendas that aren't linear, and that there are many consequences for actions. There have been many great arcs before and after Water 7, but none of them have impressed me as much as this fearless exercise in character exploration, and it is my pick for the best arc of One Piece so far. So what did you think of the list? Did you agree or disagree with any of the placements? You can let me know in the comments. Thanks for being a nerd with me, and I'll see you next time.